Welcome to Fireside Giants. My name is Alex with my co-host here, Anthony Rivardo. Today we got a special guest with us, Sayre Bedinger from the Locked On Broncos podcast. He's coming from behind enemy lines. We want to get a scouting report on the Denver Broncos, get some good information. Also give some back to him that you can take home and share with his buddies about the Giants, this Giants team. Saquon Barkley, we got Kenny Golladay, a couple guys here that are still on the injury report. We want to know a little bit about Bradley Chubb. What's up with that ankle? What's up with Teddy Bridgewater? How confident are you in this Denver Broncos team in week 1 against the New York Football Giants? But before we dive into all that, my man, Sayre, how are you doing today?
Doing great, Alex. Thank you guys so much for having me. I love this. We were talking before the show. It's just crazy how Twitter connects us all, and it's just fun, man. I love talking football. It's one of my favorite things in the world to do. So happy to get to do it with you guys today.
Absolutely, my man. I'm really excited to talk about, these two teams going to war on Sunday. Obviously, week 1, we're all excited for football. If you didn't watch that game last night, I don't know what to tell you. You missed out on a really good one. Tom Brady can't leave the man with a minute and 24 seconds left on the clock. I know they had to burn that timeout due to the penalty, but end of the day, Tom Brady, he's not walking out of there with a loss. And seeing Dallas lose for us Giants fans, icing on the cake. Best day I've had in a long time. And hopefully, a win for us this weekend will make it even better. But I want to know about this team, my man, Sayre. What is up with Teddy Bridgewater, this secondary? Is Bradley Chubb going to play? I imagine he's going to with that ankle injury. I know, you might have some information on that, for us to kind of break down. But, what are your thoughts originally on Teddy Bridgewater? I know this quarterback battle between him and Drew Lock has been ongoing. Obviously, they gave that starting gig to Teddy Bridgewater. How has he looked? And what do you think his strengths and weaknesses are against this, strong Giants secondary?
Yeah, great question. I think that when Teddy came on board, it was kind of like, well, that's kind of a nice bit of competition. Like the way that it was pitched from media members was Teddy Bridgewater really raises the floor of the quarterback room, which I thought was a good way of putting it, just because Drew Lock sort of had this way, you never know which one you were going to get on a week-to-week basis, whether he was going to throw 4 interceptions like he did against the Raiders or whether he was going to dominate like he did in his rookie season against the Houston Texans. So there was so many different versions of Drew Lock that we could potentially get. And I think with Teddy Bridgewater, the thought is, right, like you kind of know what you're going to get. And he's kind of proven that to be true in a lot of ways, both good and bad, I think. So what I think the Broncos are getting in Teddy Bridgewater, I think they're upgrading to a guy who's going to complete 67, 68, maybe more % of his passes, which is a huge change of pace from what the Broncos have had in recent years, which is just kind of crazy to think about. But even just a guy who's efficient in that way, accurate with the football. At the same time, I think what the Broncos are also getting in Teddy Bridgewater is something we saw throughout the course of the preseason where, hey, maybe there's a guy open 20, 25 yards down the field, but there's also a guy open right in front of his face, and he's going to take the guy that's open right in front of his face and kind of maybe at times forsake a bigger play for the safer play. Now, Broncos fans aren't going to get mad about a QB that won't go broke taking a profit. But at the same time, you like to see quarterbacks take shots downfield. You like to see playmakers. And in the AFC West, how could you not, with Justin Herbert on the Chargers now, Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City, and then obviously even Derek Carr with the Raiders. The Broncos are kind of sitting in 4th place in the, hey, where's your quarterback rank in the division standings? So I think for Teddy Bridgewater, the expectations they're relatively low. So I think that I kind of think that he's bound to exceed any expectations that fans really have for him right now, just because everybody thinks, well, Teddy is the next Case Keenum, or he's the next journeyman quarterback that's just going to come in and kind of be average to below average. I think he'll exceed those expectations. He's got a strong supporting cast. He looked pretty good in the preseason, to be honest with you. It was hard to argue with their decision to go with him as the starter, even with Drew Lock playing pretty well.
Yeah, and you kind of briefly touched on the playmakers there, and I want to get your take on that group in general. Jerry Judy, Courtland Sutton, Noah Fant. Who's going to be that leading receiver? What's going on at the running back position? And how are you feeling generally about the group of skill position players?
The skill position players has everyone excited. I mean, that whole group, whether you're talking, like you said, wide receiver, running back, tight end, the great thing for the Denver Broncos, which hasn't been the case in the last, I don't know how many years, is that everybody is healthy, which is crazy to even think about. They didn't have Courtland Sutton pretty much all last year. He actually tore up his knee pretty bad in the second game of the season against the Steelers, trying to make a tackle on an interception that was his fault. So he's coming back and he looks really good. I mean, he played one game in the preseason, but he was sharp and he was making plays out there. He was moving around well. So great to see him. Jerry Judy, I think, is really expected to take the biggest step for the Broncos. It seemed like over the summer, every single day or every other day, there's a video of Jerry Judy breaking somebody's ankles, whether it was at practice or just kind of out doing his own training with his route running ability. So we know Jerry Judy can create separation very easily. Saw him do it last year against the Miami Dolphins and Xavier Howard. And it was just kind of surprising the way that he's able to come into the league and do that so immediately. But obviously, it's a huge strength of his. KJ Hamler, a guy who's had a tremendous offseason, brings big-time speed to the position. And then you got Tim Patrick, who's kind of overlooked because Courtland Sutton's coming back, Jerry Judy, KJ Hamler, they're expected to take steps forward. But really, Tim Patrick was the most consistent receiver on the team last year. So the top four at that position is tremendous. And then, of course, like you mentioned, tight end Noah Fant. He's another player that's expected to take a big leap forward this year. He's already been as advertised, setting Denver Broncos franchise records for receiving yards at tight end position. Yards after the catch, he's among the league leaders in that regard. And then you bring in a guy like Albert Okuebanam, who played with Drew Lock in college, but just basically a clone of Noah Fant in terms of his size, athleticism, speed, but a different player in terms of, I think that Albert Okuebanam has a little bit better body control, a little bit more aggressive at the catch point. So where Fant excels after the catch, I think you're going to see Okuebanam get a lot of reps in the red zone and really get some looks in one-on-one situations. And then, of course, the running back position, Javonte Williams. I don't know how much you guys have heard about the North Carolina rookie, but man, they're talking him up big time. They did a behind-the-scenes documentary for the draft, and the Broncos' own personnel guys were comparing Javonte Williams to Nick Chubb, Ezekiel Elliott. We heard Teddy Bridgewater recently compared him to Alvin Kamara. Vic Fangio recently said he's got the opportunity to play in any situation. He's earned the trust of the coaching staff. And he said the last time that he saw a player do that was when he was with the Colts back in the 90s at Edgerrin James in his rookie season. So tons of lofty comparisons been thrown out about Javonte Williams, but at the same time, he hasn't been able to overtake Melvin Gordon, who's on the second year of his 2-year deal, who I think is going to be really good this season as well. So the skill position talent, while it's kind of been coming along super slowly over the last couple of years for the Broncos, is finally at a point where this year, I think, obviously, if you're Teddy Bridgewater, you're looking at this as like, man, I kind of have an embarrassment of riches out here, especially because they're 100% healthy going into this first week of the season.
Yeah, man. I mean, I'll tell you what, the way you talk about it gives me a little bit of fear. I'm a little scared of these guys. You just mentioned your top four receivers in KJ Hamler, Courtland Sutton, Jerry Judy, and Tim Patrick. Tim Patrick was a good receiver for you guys last year. He was a guy I was like, okay, like that could be a number 2, number 3 receiver on the team. So obviously we have our hands full with your wide receivers. And, just to give you some background in our secondary, of course, we have James Bradbury, who is, top 10 corner in the NFL, in our opinion, at least. And I think most people's opinion. Adoree Jackson, who when is healthy is a tremendous cornerback. So we have 2 number 1 corners on our team. So you can say like, they'll probably go up against KJ Hamler. Adoree Jackson might guard KJ Hamler. Jerry Judy will be probably guarded by Darnay Holmes. And to give us some insight, Darnay Holmes has had a pretty rough summer. So I imagine Jerry Judy, if he's playing in that slot role, is going to be able to take advantage of that slot matchup. If he's on the outside, Adoree Jackson, another, a good cornerback, good speedy physical cornerback. He'll have a hard time against him. James Bradbury is, he locked down guys like Allen Robinson, had 14 yards in the game last year. So, you're looking at a player like that. Going up against, let's say, Courtland Sutton, he's going to have a tough time. He'll get some catches, but he'll have a tough time for the most part. And then you're, obviously Noah Fant, that's a big one. We have our money backer, Jabril Peppers, probably lining up on him primarily. We'll have our trio of safeties, Logan Ryan, Xavier McKinney, and of course Peppers, kind of rotating there. They like to get very, very creative, like to get very disguising with their coverage. Patrick Graham devises a lot of disguises, a lot of blitz packages. Expect to see Teddy Bridgewater having to make quick decisions, not a lot of downfield vertical throws, because the Giants are going to be on him like white on rice. They're going to be really, really fast with it. A lot of pressure. We overhauled our outside linebacker unit this offseason, so we have new guys. We have Lorenzo Carter coming back, who our defensive coordinator said looks like an entirely different player. So we have a lot of talent on defense. It should, honestly, the way I see it, this is going to be a defensive battle. I think, Teddy Bridgewater, his first game with this offense, there will be mistakes. Same with our offense. There will be mistakes. But I think I think both teams will stay under 25, 20 points. It's going to be a war on defense. But, my next question for you is, what's up with Bradley Chubb? I know he got arrested for missing a traffic ticket or something, but he was back in practice the next day. Then he missed that practice with an ankle injury. Is this something that's new or something that's lingering? They're just letting him rest. I'm curious to see, what's going on with him.
Yeah, so regarding his traffic violations and stuff that he had, I guess that he was supposed to appear in court on one of the days the Broncos were in Minneapolis for joint practices. So, you got to take care of your personal stuff, right? I mean, that's just, it shows irresponsibility a little bit. But Vic Fangio was like, Bradley Chubb's an upstanding guy. They don't think it's an issue with him. And I'm sure Chubb just feels like an idiot for that. So I think he'll be all right in that regard. But at the same time, with the ankle thing, it's kind of a concern. I mean, on the one hand, you're thankful that it's not the same ankle that he, had to go on IR at the end of last season to get, surgically repaired. On the other hand, it's just like one of a number of things, that keeps coming up, whether he, tore his ACL 2019, had the ankle injury last year. Now he sprained his ankle again. I kind of feel like he's really trying hard to play. And I'm trying to like resonate personally with him on this, right? So like if I did something like getting detained for a traffic violation or whatever the heck it was, I would be doing my best to like make up for that in whatever way possible that I could. So like I kind of see he came back to practice on Thursday in a limited basis, and Vic Fangio said he looked better than he had in previous days. So I think that Chubb is going to try to do whatever he can to be in that game, and not just because of it, but like especially because of the fact that like he was detained and had to go into court and do all those things. So I think he wants to make up for that in a big way. So, and obviously, when he's healthy, man, he's really, really, really good. I mean, Chubb has taken a huge step. He made the Pro Bowl last year. I think he only had like 7.5 sacks, but that just goes to show kind of just how good he was when he was healthy. So definitely expecting big things from him.
Yeah, big things from Bradley Chubb. And sticking to the defensive side of the ball, I actually want to ask you about the rookies, right? Patrick Surtain, he looked phenomenal in the preseason by all accounts. So what's your take on him? How has he looked throughout the summer in the preseason? And then I also want to ask you about another rookie from that class, Quinn Miners, actually a player that we had on this podcast and interviewed before the draft. Really loved speaking to him, and I'm rooting really hard for him. I hope that he becomes like an all-pro player for you guys. But how has he looked throughout the preseason? I haven't, kept up the Broncos too much, so little in the dark there. How has he looked? How has Surtain looked? And what's your confidence level with those guys going into the season?
No, that's awesome. That's cool that you guys got to talk to Quinn. And I think a big thing with him is the fact that he, had to kind of change positions when he came into the league. The Broncos asked him to play center, which he did a little bit of at the Senior Bowl, but he admitted at the Senior Bowl, really self-taught at that position. So I think seeing him kind of transition, it was a little bit slower than people anticipated. So Lloyd Cushingberry III really was able to kind of solidify himself in that role. There wasn't really a training camp battle whatsoever for that spot. So the Broncos actually mixed Quinn Miners back into the guard position a little bit. So he's listed on their depth chart as center and guard, but saw some good things from him in the preseason. Honestly, especially in that very first preseason game against the Vikings, he was burying some dudes, both in pass protection and in the run game. So really, really good to see. Obviously, just a freak of an athlete for the interior offensive line. I think he was number 4 on the relative athletic score for the last 34 years. So really excited for his future. I don't know what it's going to be because the interior offensive line for the Broncos is so good right now. In terms of just at least they have guys that they believe in or that they've invested highly in. Second round pick Dalton Reissner, third round Lloyd Cushingberry at the center, and then obviously big money free agent Graham Glasgow at the right guard. So I'll be interested to see where he kind of fits in longer term. But of course, over the summer, you see some good, you see some bad. I think he proves kind of his physical gifts are there. He just needs some time to kind of catch up with the NFL, getting involved in an NFL offense and playing against NFL guys, especially after not playing last year at all. So, and then with Surtain, he's been exactly as advertised. And I know I get to evaluate the NFL draft as well. So dating back to Surtain's freshman year at Alabama, you could see man, this guy just looks like a professional football player at the age of 18. right? And so like when he, progressed and developed over the course of the next couple of years, I think it was just kind of, he was so good that it was boring kind of thing, right? And then he comes into the NFL and he's kind of done a lot of the similar things, except for Vic Fangio is really working at getting him involved. I know you mentioned Jabril Peppers plays kind of that, I think you called it, I can't remember exactly what you called it, star or something like that.
Money back.
I know Nick's money backer. There you go. I know that like at Alabama, Nick Saban calls it the star, and I think Surtain played that a little bit early on. The Broncos are going to use him all over the place, and they kind of view him initially with all the other investments they made in the secondary. They kind of view him as that guy that can shut down tight ends, as they've been really stunk at doing that the last few years. And I don't even know how long it's been since they've had anybody that could cover tight ends, but everybody's like, you got to find this Fred Warner type linebacker. You got to find these linebackers that can cover and play all three downs. And it's like, well, why not just go get, a cornerback one, because who better to cover a Travis Kelce, a Darren Waller, or when healthy, a guy like Evan Ingram than somebody, that could legitimately be a cornerback one for your defense. So it's kind of an embarrassment of riches back there for the secondary, but at the same time, the Broncos were depleted there last year. So it was tough to watch. You got guys like Parnell Motley starting for you down the stretch at the end of the season, and he didn't even make it to the final cuts this year. So I think that obviously Surtain is going to have a big impact. What that looks like, it's still a mystery to everybody. We know that he's been trained at a multitude of positions, but I think it's your guess is as good as mine as to where we'll see him line up when the ball is kicked off and the game gets going.
Yeah, man. I will say we know all about cornerback issues from last year. We had a starter, Corey Ballantyne. He was cut by week 2. The Jets picked him up, and he spent the rest of the season on their practice squad. Then we had Ryan Lewis. He got injured. Then we had Isaac Yadam, who we traded a 7th-round pick for starting. So our CB2, all about Isaac Yadam. So, we traded a 7th-rounder to you guys for him. We just cut him, recently, or we traded him to Green Bay. And got Josh Jackson in return. So he's been moving all around. He seems to be a guy that nobody really wants, but everybody wants at the same time. But interesting. Let me jump over to our sponsor really quickly. BetQL. Want to get an advantage over your sportsbook? You need to download BetQL, the only app you'll need to make smart bets. Their best bet computer model scans over 350,000 unique bets per year to give you a best bet recommendation for every game across all major sports and gives you the reasoning behind why you should place the bet. Their model covers everything from spreads, over and unders, and player prop bets. Don't want to use the model and prefer to do the research yourself? BetQL has all the necessary tools for your research needs. As I've been saying the past couple of days, guys, I use this platform myself. It absolutely works. All my friends are starting to get onto it. They're all like, this is ridiculous. Like usually the pros only win an average of 54% of the time. I think I'm up at 80% now, 90% win rate so far, and it's been absolutely fantastic. They really cover everything from breaking news, injury status updates. Plus, you can save all your picks in one place to track your success and winning streaks, as well as view your rank on their leaderboards. Head over to the App Store or Google Play Store now to download BetQL. You can also head to try.betql.co/fireside to get started now. Enter the discount code Fireside at payment. Check out for 25% off any of their subscription offerings. You can find all this information in the description of this video. Make sure to check out their BetMGM offer in the description in order to receive a whole free year of BetQL, this service that has been kicking absolute ass for me and winning me tons of money. So I absolutely guarantee you'll enjoy this product. You can make some good money, and more so than if you were just betting regularly. So really cool product there, and I hope you guys enjoy that. And the discount code as well. Anthony, he made, what was that, $1? One whole dollar? Is that just a one? I thought it was like a $2 bill for a second. I was like, wow, where did you even find that?
I got $2 just sitting on my desk. Shout out to BetQL.
But yeah, guys, so go check that out. And Sayre, this Denver game for us is a big deal. We haven't won a week 1 contest since 2016. It's been quite a while. And I know you guys have also had your fair share of struggles. What is your prediction for this game? Final score? Do you think it's going to be more of a defensive battle? Do you think your offense clicks right off the bat? Are you confident that Teddy Bridgewater can get you guys off to a hot start?
Man, that's a great question. I don't know. I do think it's going to be a defensive battle a little bit. I tend to have a little bit more faith, like in the skill players that the Broncos have. I kind of think that they're going to do a good enough job. At the same time, you got to respect the Giants defense. I was one that had been clamoring for the Broncos to make a move for Leonard Williams. So I'm jealous that you guys get to have him and the havoc that he causes on the defensive line. Also, couldn't believe that Azeez Ojulari, made it to the second round of the draft. Definitely one of my favorite guys in this class, and a guy that a lot of Broncos fans frankly wanted. So I know there's a number of players, and of course James Bradbury, who wouldn't have wanted him in free agency when he became available. So I think there's definitely reason to believe this is going to be a defensive battle, especially because it's just hard to know right now, like, how are the Broncos offensive linemen going to look, after last year. There was tons of shuffling, a lot of injuries, especially on the right side. Lloyd Cushingberry struggled as a rookie. So how are they going to handle guys like Leonard Williams, guys like Azeez Ojulari? You mentioned Lorenzo Carter as well, just another freak of an athlete. I mean, that's kind of a common theme for these two teams. They get these freak athletes out there, and you just never know what's going to happen. For me, and all due respect to Daniel Jones, I just don't have the faith in Daniel Jones. I think the Broncos fans this offseason have been heavily criticized for the fact that George Payton, the new GM, didn't take Justin Fields. And now people are talking about Mac Jones now that he's looking pretty good. So for me, I'm like, man, the Giants are the ones that traded the pick, right? They didn't take Justin Fields either. So I don't know. I don't know where Daniel Jones is going to be at this year. And I feel like with Denver's defense, fully healthy, even without Bradley Chubb, I kind of wonder if they're able to take Saquon Barkley out of the game. And from what I understand, he's supposed to be on some kind of a pitch count for this game. So if they're able to take him out of the game, I just wonder can Daniel Jones beat the Denver Broncos defense at full strength? Personally, I don't see that. But at the same time, like, the Broncos haven't won a September game since I don't know how long, 2018. They've been 0-7 in September since Vic Fangio became the head coach. So that goes in the Giants' favor. So for me, I'm the eternal optimist, guys. I 17-0 until we ain't. That's how I approach everything. So I would say something like 24-20 Broncos, pretty close game, but obviously your listeners aren't going to like to hear that. That's just, and I try to keep it real too. So if we're going up against Kansas City week 1, I could deal with taking a loss there if that was the case. But this is for both sides. This is supposed to be a winnable game, a must-win game, right? You got to beat a team like the Broncos from your guys' perspective, right? Coming in, the Broncos are a 4th place team from last year. The quarterback situation is unsettled. The head coach is probably on the hot seat. So for the Broncos coming into New York, I definitely could see, like, hey, we got to win. We got to be able to win this game. Daniel Jones has to be able to take that next step, even against a good defense.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. We also are kind of on the fence about Daniel Jones. We don't know yet if he is the guy. They haven't done much to help him, right? The offensive line, still a huge problem. We do not know how they're going to perform at all. Daniel Jones has never had a wide receiver 1 in his entire career. The second, they trade Odell Beckham Jr. and then they draft Daniel Jones and they replaced him with Golden Tate. So we're like, okay, you didn't really give him much there. Saquon Barkley had a great rookie season and then, the injuries, but he is supposed to play this weekend. And like you said, he probably will be on a pitch count. I would not be surprised to see him feature more as a receiver out of the backfield so they can kind of mitigate how many hits he's taking. They don't really want to be running him inside zone, like letting him take all these hits in week 1. They're probably going to use him a lot as a receiver. At least that's how I see it going. And they're going to use Devontae Booker a lot more on the ground personally. Of course, you got Kenny Golladay also working his way back from injury. Said it's going to be a little rusty in week 1. Our offense, by all purposes, is going to have struggles. They're going to be in a position where we're only going to score maybe 20 points that game. Our defense is going to have to step up, and it's going to be all about putting pressure on Teddy Bridgewater, making him make mistakes. But as you said, he's a high percentage thrower. He does not miss a lot of throws. He is very accurate, but he also has his cons. He's not a guy that's going to throw the ball downfield like Patrick Mahomes all the time. They're really hoping to confuse him, disguise coverages, intercept routes, create fumbles. They're going to be doing all these different things to try and get in his head. That's really what Patrick Graham is known for. They did against Russell Wilson last year, and they did a phenomenal job, confusing him and making him make mistakes. It's going to be about, all those guys. But, my last question for you is, how is your offensive line? Are you confident in that offensive line?
I personally am. I think they made some good strides last year. Garrett Bowles obviously went from being what everybody, even Broncos fans who had the most optimism possible, basically considering him an NFL draft bust, to becoming an all-pro at the position, which is insane. I mean, I think Josh Allen obviously did that last year, looking kind of terrible in his first 2 years as a passer and then becoming an MVP candidate in year 3. Garrett Bowles, of course, was the king of holding penalties and just doing the wrong thing at the worst possible time through his first 3 years. And so he came out last year and played exceptionally well, and the Broncos gave him a big contract as a result. And then Dalton Reissner at left guard, he's a guy that everybody really expects kind of just like consistent play. Like I said, with the quarterback position, you have a higher floor. I think Dalton Reissner gives you a pretty high floor at the left guard position. He may not be the most athletic guy, but he's certainly going to be one of the most prepared guys that you have, and he's gonna do his job more often than not, and he's probably not going to get beat a ton, even against guys who are physically or athletically more gifted. He's just a good player. Lloyd Cushingberry is a question mark. He, like I said, he beat out Quinn Miners pretty early on. I think the Broncos kind of decided even before training camp that Cushingberry was the guy at center. So I hope that we see a better version of him this year. We saw him take some strides down the stretch last season, which was huge. So I think that's a big, one of the big question marks. Graham Glasgow, you expect a guy that's getting paid $11 million a year at the guard position to be Pro Bowl caliber. So I expect him to be Pro Bowl caliber. And then Bobby Massey at the right tackle position, former Chicago Bear. He's going to be starting this year as the placeholder. The Broncos have had a revolving door at QB, but I think it's been even worse at right tackle. So Bobby Massey is a guy that it could be kind of like a blessing in disguise with Jawan James going down with the season-ending injury over the summer. You bring in a guy like Bobby Massey, who hasn't exactly been a model of health over the last couple seasons by any means, but at the same time, when he plays, he's pretty consistent. And so I think that the offensive line as a whole and the depth there, I mean, Netani Muti is a guy we haven't talked about, and that's kind of just like a deep cut for Broncos roster stuff, but he was a big-time prospect last year coming out of Fresno State who fell in the draft due to injury concerns. He's been really good when he gets a chance to play. So there's depth there for the Broncos on the offensive line, feeling pretty good about it, especially when it comes to the running game. I think they have a chance to really establish themselves as one of the better run blocking units in the league this year.
I'm jealous. I know that for a fact. Our offensive line is an absolute mess. We don't know what's going on at left tackle. We don't know what's going on at right tackle. We don't know what's going on at left guard or right guard, even center. I mean, Nick Gates, we have trust in him, but Andrew Thomas, left tackle, had a pretty tough game last week. We just found out he was actually sick, so that was a major reason why he was, struggled. So, we can make excuses all day for these guys, though. At the end of the day, we haven't seen any of them really step up and play well. Nate Solder coming back from an opt-out year. He really struggled in 2019. Will Hernandez looked great. He's looked like our best offensive lineman this summer. So hopefully he continues that into the regular season at right guard, taking over for Kevin Zeitler. Nick Gates, probably our most consistent guy. He is a captain now. I trust him. I trust right guard, left guard. We had to just trade a 4th-round pick for Ben Bredesen, a 3rd stringer or 2nd stringer on Baltimore. So we'll see how that goes. He probably will end up starting at some point over Shane Lemieux. So really your best bet, attack our tackles. Like you guys have outside linebackers in Von Miller and Bradley Chubb that will destroy our tackles. Like you will win a lot of those battles, unfortunately to say. But I will say you're going to see Daniel Jones. They're going to try and get creative. You're going to see pre-snap motion with Kadarius Toney. You're going to see Saquon Barkley running routes. You're going to see Daniel Jones probably with some read options. They can do a lot of creative things. It really boils down to Jason Garrett not running hook and curl routes every single play, which has been every Giants fan's nightmare since last year. Anthony, do you have anything else to ask there before we wrap up here?
No, I mean, I got to say, yeah, I'm jealous by that offensive line. Of course, I think that, one thing I want to ask both of you, over under, let's say 3.5 sacks for the Denver Broncos defense on Sunday. I'm saying that they get over that. I think Daniel Jones gets dropped like 4 times, to be honest.
I agree. I think 4 sacks sounds about right. And 15 fumbles to go with his 4 sacks.
Oh man, that stinks. That would be awesome for the Broncos perspective, right? To be able to have Von Miller come back off injury, Bradley Chubb coming off his own ankle injury that he's dealing with. I mean, the depth that they have at the outside linebacker position is kind of crazy at this point. So I mean, I could see that happening, especially with the struggles the Giants have had at tackle, like you mentioned. So I could definitely see over 3, but like you said, that those read options, that could be a problem. That does throw pass rushers off their game a little bit, especially if Daniel Jones is able to actually have some success in that, which I think he can. The Broncos got kind of torched by, I think it was Bryce Perkins from the Rams when they had their first string defense out there for the third preseason game. The Rams one of their backup quarterbacks came in and he was kind of running around on the first team defense quite a bit, which fans were like, what the heck is going on right now? Like, this shouldn't be happening, but so it goes. So I think the Broncos may have some trouble with that. So we'll see. That could be a wrinkle that, changes some things for Vic Fangio.
Absolutely. Well, I really appreciate you coming on, Sayre, talking about the Denver Broncos, breaking down their weaknesses, their strengths. It sounds like they have a lot more strengths than weaknesses. Aside from that unsettled quarterback position, you guys have a strong receiver core, strong tight ends, strong offensive line, strong secondary, strong defensive line. For the most part, the Giants definitely have their work cut out for them this year, week 1 game. But we have our strengths too. You never know. We really just don't know what this Giants team has to offer yet. Even as fans, even as people that have been following this team religiously every single day we're on top of everything. We still don't know what this offense has. We haven't seen Kenny Golladay. We haven't seen Tony, haven't seen Saquon, haven't seen this offensive line really yet. It's going to be a big question mark going into week 1. So it's hard to tell if they're going to be good, if they're going to be bad, if they're going to be okay. But this defense if I was at Denver, I'd be like, okay, we got a plan around beating that defense. If we can beat the defense, we will win this game. That's how I would look at it if I were you guys, because our defense is very, very strong and our coordinator and our scheme is very good. So that's really what I'd be looking at for you guys. But Sayre, really appreciate you coming on. Make sure to go follow Sayre Bedinger on Twitter at SayreBedinger, covering the Broncos, doing some really great work, co-host at Locked On Broncos and site expert at Predom Orange, doing a lot of great things. And, obviously one of the best interviews I've had lately. Really awesome to talk to you, Sayre, and I appreciate all the insight.
No, that's awesome. Thank you guys so much for having me. And hey, everybody's undefeated right now, right? So you know what? That's how I want to approach it. Yeah, except for Dallas. That's right. Dang it, you're right. Except for Dallas, which is even better for you guys. So good vibes going into the season.
Absolutely, my man. Well, really appreciate it. Hope you have a fantastic rest of your day and awesome weekend, except for Sunday. Hope you have a terrible Sunday because the Denver Broncos lose. But, we'll hopefully we'll connect with you later on in the year, talk about your team and stuff. So hope you have an awesome day and weekend. We'll catch you later.
Cool. Thank you, guys.
Have a good one.